HOA President Mrs. Blackwood couldn't stand Mia's beautiful fence art. When Mia tried to protect her artwork, Mrs. Blackwood grabbed a metal pipe. In rage, without warning, she swung it at Mia's legs, breaking them both. The young girl fell silently, unable to even scream, as her only form of expression was violently taken away. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more videos. Mia hadn't spoken a word since the car crash 2 years ago. The doctors called it selective mutism, saying the trauma had locked her voice away. At 10 years old, she communicated only through nods, hand gestures, and colorful drawings in her notebooks. Her father James watched her carefully as they unpacked boxes in their new home. After 15 years as a police detective, he'd earned many awards, but nothing mattered more than helping his daughter heal. That's why he'd requested the transfer to Pinewood Estates, a fresh start in a quiet neighborhood where Mia might find her voice again. "What do you think of your new room?" James asked, placing a box of art supplies on her desk. Mia smiled and gave a thumbs up, then pointed to the large backyard outside her window. "Yes, plenty of space for your easel out there," he agreed. Neither realized their new neighborhood was controlled by Mrs. Blackwood, the Homeowners Association president. With her perfect gray hair and ever-present clipboard, she took maintaining community standards as seriously as a military mission. She had very specific ideas about what belonged in Pinewood Estates, ideas that would soon clash with Mia's needs. Spring weather brought Mia outdoors with her paints nearly every day. On the wooden fence facing the community path, she created a stunning mural. Bright birds flew across a blue sky, trees reached toward clouds, and hidden within were special details: her late mother's favorite flowers, the family dog they'd lost in the accident, and symbols of her healing journey. Neighbors often stopped to admire her work. Some even left encouraging notes. For the first time since the accident, Mia seemed to find peace. Then came the violation notice, bright orange and stapled to their door: unauthorized property modification, removal required within 48 hours. James immediately met with Mrs. Blackwood, bringing letters from Ma's therapist explaining how art therapy helped her recovery. "This is a medical necessity, not vandalism," James explained in Mrs. Blackwood's spotless office. Mrs. Blackwood adjusted her pearl necklace, her eyes cold. "Rules don't have exceptions, Detective. Property values affect everyone. Your daughter's issues are not the community's concern. She's communicating through that mural," James insisted. "It's the only way." The fence must be restored to its original condition. Mrs. Blackwood interrupted. "This neighborhood has standards." 3 days later, James received an emergency call about a hostage situation. "I have to go, sweetheart," he told Mia, who was adding details to her mural. "I'll be back soon." Mia nodded, focused on her painting. Less than an hour after James left, Mrs. Blackwood arrived with 2 workers carrying paint buckets. She marched across the lawn, clipboard in hand. "Start with that section," she ordered, pointing to the part showing Mia's mother. Mia dropped her paintbrush and rushed to stand in front of her artwork. She shook her head frantically, hands raised to stop them. "Move aside, young lady," Mrs. Blackwood commanded. Mia stood firmly in place, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Blackwood's expression hardened. She grabbed a metal pipe one worker had brought to prop open paint cans. "I said, move." Across the street, 16-year-old Ethan was filming through his bedroom window. He'd been documenting Mrs. Blackwood's reign of terror for months for a school project. What he captured next would change everything. Mrs. Blackwood swung the pipe, intending to scare Ma. Instead, the metal hit Mia's legs with a sickening crack. Mia crumpled to the ground, a silent scream on her face. Ethan immediately called 911, his hands shaking as he kept filming. James paced the hospital hallway, his police badge still clipped to his belt. The lights buzzed overhead as he waited for news about Mia. Detective Reynolds, a doctor, approached, her face serious. "I'm Dr. Lynn. We've completed the initial assessment of your daughter's injuries." James braced himself. "How bad is it?" "Both her leg bones are fractured, with the right leg broken in 2 places." Dr. Lynn's voice was gentle but direct. "We need to operate immediately to insert pins and plates. I'm concerned about nerve damage too." "Will she walk again?" James asked, his throat tight. Dr. Lynn hesitated. "With extensive therapy, yes, but I need to be honest, there may be permanent limitations." The force used was significant. James closed his eyes, remembering how Mia once danced around their living room before the accident that took his wife. Before the silence, "There's something else," Dr. Lynn added. "When the paramedics brought Mia in, the woman who injured her, Mrs. Blackwood," James said, jaw clenching. "Yes, she was already telling hospital staff your daughter attacked her and she acted in self-defense." Dr. Lynn frowned. "I've treated Mia's injuries myself. They're not consistent with that story." Mrs. Blackwood's voice suddenly echoed from the nurse's station. "I need to speak with whoever's in charge. This situation has been grossly misrepresented." James started toward her, but Dr. Lin caught his arm. "Detective, your daughter needs you calm right now. She's preparing for surgery." Swallowing his rage, James turned toward Mia's room. Instead, she lays small and broken on the hospital bed, her legs immobilized. When she saw him, she didn't attempt to sign or gesture. She simply closed her eyes. By morning, the hospital waiting room filled with officers from James's precinct. His partner, Detective Ramirez, brought coffee and updates. The responding officers recognized your address immediately, Ramirez explained. They filed it as aggravated assault with a deadly weapon against a minor. "Thank you," James exhaled. "There's more," Ramirez continued quietly. "Councilman Blackwood has been calling the chief since dawn. He's pushing for this to be handled administratively rather than through criminal charges." "Administrative? She broke my daughter's legs." "I know, James, but Blackwood controls the police budget for the entire county. He's suggesting a private settlement, full medical coverage, pain and suffering, whatever Maya needs in exchange for what? Dropping any criminal complaints and signing a non-disclosure agreement." James stared in disbelief. "They want me to pretend this never happened? Let her get away with attacking a child?" The hospital administrator appeared with a folder. "Detective Reynolds, we have paperwork for Maya's care. Also, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood have requested a meeting to discuss arrangements." Through the window, James saw Councilman Blackwood in an expensive suit, his wife beside him, showing no remorse. "Maya is still in recovery," James said. "I'm not leaving her." "Of course," the administrator nodded. "But you should know your insurance has a very high deductible for the surgical procedures Maya needs. The Blackwoods are offering to cover all expenses." James thought of his savings already stretched thin. "Mia would need therapy, possibly more surgeries, special equipment. I'll consider it," he finally said. Back in Mia's room, he found her awake but unresponsive. The nurses explained she hadn't tried to communicate since arriving, not even with the tablet they provided. She just stared at the wall, occasionally letting silent tears fall. "The surgery went well," James told her, stroking her hair. "You're going to heal, sweetheart." Maya didn't react. "I saw some art supplies in the playroom. Want me to bring some paper and markers?" For the first time, Mia's eyes showed emotion, not interest but fear. She turned away. James realized with sinking clarity Mrs. Blackwood hadn't just broken Mia's legs, she had destroyed her connection to her only form of expression. 3 days later, James wheeled Mia out of the hospital. They returned home to find Mia's beautiful mural covered with flat beige paint that matched every other fence in the neighborhood. Mia didn't cry. She didn't react at all. She simply closed her eyes as James carried her inside. That night, after tucking Maya into bed surrounded by pillows to protect her casted legs, James opened his laptop. His email contained the settlement offer from the Blackwoods' lawyer: full coverage of Mia's medical expenses, a substantial payment for pain and suffering, and funds for future therapy, all dependent on his signature on a non-disclosure agreement and withdrawal of criminal charges. His phone buzzed with a text from Ramirez: "Chief wants to see you tomorrow. Blackwood's putting pressure on everyone. Be careful." As James considered his impossible choice, a knock sounded at the front door. A tall teenager stood on the porch, nervously looking over his shoulder. "Detective Reynolds, I'm Ethan. I live across the street." "It's late, Ethan." "I know, sir, but this couldn't wait." He held up his phone. "I have a video of what happened to Maya." James stared. "You recorded it?" Ethan nodded. "I've been documenting Mrs. Blackwood's HOA violations for a school project I was filming when she showed up at your house." He handed James a flash drive. "The original file is here. I haven't shown it to anyone yet, but Mrs. Blackwood is on the school board at my school. My mom got a call today saying I'm facing expulsion for invasion of privacy if I share this video." Ethan looked down. "But that's not right. What happened to Maya wasn't right." James held the flash drive like gold. "Thank you, Ethan. This took courage." "How is she?" "Maya physically, she'll recover eventually, but she hasn't tried to communicate at all since it happened." Ethan's eyes widened. "She doesn't talk right, but she used to wave to me when I'd passed by, and her art, it was amazing." "My little sister has autism," Ethan said quietly. "We moved here last year and Mrs. Blackwood has filed 3 complaints about the sensory equipment in our backyard. Mom's thinking of moving again. This isn't the first time she's targeted families with special needs children. Not even close. There was a family with a son who had Down syndrome. They left after Mrs. Blackwood led a campaign against his physical therapy equipment, and before that a girl with severe allergies whose mother fought for a ban on certain plants near the playground." James's detective instincts activated. "Do you have contact information for these families?" Ethan smiled for the first time. "My mom does. She runs a support group for parents of children with disabilities. She's been tracking Mrs. Blackwood's actions for months." After Ethan left, James plugged in the flash drive. The video was crystal clear. There was no question about what happened. Mrs. Blackwood had deliberately struck Mia with enough force to break both her legs, then immediately started creating her cover story while Mia lay crumpled on the ground. James picked up the settlement offer and tore it in half. The next week passed in a blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and meetings with the district attorney. Maya remained withdrawn, refusing to use even basic sign language. She rejected art supplies, tablets, notepads, anything that might allow her to express herself. James took leave from work sleeping on a makeshift bed beside Maya each night. Sometimes he woke to find her silently crying, but when he reached for her, she turned away. The HOA sent a statement to all residents describing the unfortunate incident as a misunderstanding and asserting their full support for Mrs. Blackwood. The letter described Maya as a troubled child with behavioral issues, a complete lie that nonetheless gained traction among neighbors who had never met the silent girl. With Ethan's help, James connected with 5 families who had been forced out of the neighborhood by Mrs. Blackwood's targeted harassment. Each had similar stories: arbitrary rule enforcement, personal intimidation, and eventually community isolation. This time Mrs. Blackwood had chosen the wrong target. Between James's police connections, Ethan's video evidence, and the growing coalition of former residents willing to testify about the pattern of abuse, the district attorney filed formal charges of aggravated assault against Mrs. Blackwood. Councilman Blackwood retaliated immediately. James received notice that he was under investigation for abuse of police authority. His bank called about a sudden audit of his accounts. Anonymous complaints appeared in his personnel file. Through it all, Maya remained locked in her silent world, her physical pain obvious but her emotional state unreachable. The monthly HOA meeting fell on a rainy Tuesday evening. James had no intention of attending. Mia had a physical therapy appointment that afternoon that had left her exhausted and in pain, but as he tucked her into bed, Maya unexpectedly reached for the tablet she had been ignoring for weeks. With trembling fingers she typed, "Meeting tonight." James nodded, surprised. "Yes, but we don't need to go," she typed again. "Want to?" "Maya, you need rest, and those people, they've been horrible to us." Her fingers hovered over the screen before typing, "My voice." James's heart clenched. For 2 years he had hoped for any sign that Maya might find her voice again. Now in the wake of this trauma she was somehow reaching for it. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Maya nodded, determination in her eyes. For the first time in weeks the community center buzzed with tension as residents took their seats. Mrs. Blackwood presided at the front table, her husband standing protectively beside her. "Despite the pending criminal charges, she had refused to step down." "Before we begin," she announced, "I want to address the unfortunate rumors circulating about recent events. As your elected HOA president, I have always acted in the best interest of our community standards and property values." Murmur spread through the crowd. "Tonight I'm proposing amendments to our guidelines to prevent future misunderstandings. These include stricter limitations on exterior decorations, mandatory pre-approval for any visual elements visible from common areas, and a formal process for addressing violations." James slipped into the back of the room, carefully pushing Mia's wheelchair. Her legs and casts were propped up on extended footrests. She looked small and fragile, but her eyes were alert. Mrs. Blackwood faltered slightly when she noticed them, then continued with more force, "These measures will ensure our neighborhood maintains the exclusive standards that protect all our investment standards." James spoke from the back of the room. "Is that what you call assaulting a child?" All heads turned toward them. Mrs. Blackwood's face hardened. "Detective Reynolds, this meeting is for constructive community discussion, not personal grievances." "What happened to my daughter is a community issue," James replied, pushing Mia's wheelchair forward. "Every family here deserves to know the truth about how you enforce your standards." "This is inappropriate." Councilman Blackwood interrupted. "We have a legal process underway for these allegations." "Allegations?" James stopped halfway to the front. Maya was expressing herself through art, the only way she could communicate, and your wife destroyed that along with her ability to walk." Mrs. Blackwood's voice turned. "I see your daughter has behavioral issues. She became aggressive when I enforced legitimate HOA regulations." The room fell silent as Mia slowly raised her hand. Everyone stared at the small girl who had never been heard to speak. "Maya has something to say," James said quietly. Mrs. Blackwood smirked. "We all know your daughter doesn't speak." Detective Mia's hand trembled as she lowered it to her lap. For a moment James thought she had changed her mind. Then, in a voice so soft everyone leaned forward to hear, Maya spoke her first words in 2 years. "You hurt me." The simple sentence hung in the air like thunder. "You broke my legs." Mia's voice grew stronger with each word. "You call me names. You painted over my mom." Tears streamed down James's face as he heard his daughter's voice again, a voice he had feared was gone forever. Mrs. Blackwood's composure cracked. "This is clearly rehearsed. I have something everyone should see." Ethan stood up, his laptop in hand. Despite his mother's worried expression, he walked to the projector set up. "Young man, you do not have permission to." Mrs. Blackwood began. "Actually, according to HOA bylaws, any resident may present relevant community information with proper notice, which I submitted last week." Ethan replied, connecting his computer. The screen lit up with footage of Ma's yard. The mural was visible in all its beauty: birds flying across a wooden canvas, trees reaching upward, hidden symbols of Mia's journey. Then Mrs. Blackwood entered the frame with the maintenance workers. The confrontation played out exactly as it happened, Maya standing protectively before her art, Mrs. Blackwood grabbing the metal pipe, the deliberate swing, Mia crumpling to the ground. Gasps filled the room. Someone began to cry. The video continued, showing Mrs. Blackwood standing over Mia's crumpled form, saying clearly, "See what happens when you don't follow the rules." Now clean this mess up before someone important sees it. When the lights came back on, the room erupted in chaos. Residents shouted questions and accusations. Councilman Blackwood tried to take control, but no one was listening. Above the noise, Mia's voice rang out again, stronger now. I couldn't talk after my mom died. The pictures were my words. She looked directly at Mrs. Blackwood. You tried to take my words away again. Mrs. Blackwood grabbed her purse and headed for the door, her husband close behind. Two police officers, colleagues of James who had come to support him, stepped forward to block their exit. Margaret Blackwood, you're under arrest for aggravated assault against a minor, one officer announced, reading her rights as he handcuffed her. As they led Mrs. Blackwood away, the community erupted in applause, not for the arrest but for Maya, who had found the extraordinary courage to break through her silence when it mattered most. Summer bloomed across Pinewood Estates, bringing changes no one could have imagined. Months earlier, the new HOA board approved the transformation of an unused lot into a community art space. Residents donated supplies, built accessible pathways, and installed benches beneath shade trees. They named it Mia's Voice. Ma's physical recovery progressed slowly. She graduated from a wheelchair to a walker, then to special braces that allowed more mobility. The pain remained, but so did her determination, and remarkably, the words that had emerged at the community meeting continued to flow, first in whispers to her father, then in short sentences to her doctors, and finally in conversations with other children who gathered at the art space each afternoon. Why did you decide to teach art classes? A local reporter asked Mia as she prepared for the grand opening celebration. Maya adjusted her leg brace before answering, some kids can't find their words either. Art helps them talk without talking. The community art space became known throughout the region. Families with children facing various challenges, autism, anxiety, trauma, physical disabilities, came to participate in the free weekend workshops. Mia emerged as a natural teacher, patient in ways only someone who had experienced deep silence could be. On the anniversary of the incident, James watched from a bench as Mia led a small group of children in creating a mural. Her voice, once locked away by trauma, now rang clear as she encouraged a hesitant boy to add his contribution. It doesn't have to be perfect, she told him gently, it just has to be yours. The mural they created showed a community of diverse figures standing together beneath a bright sky. In the center, a small girl painted birds taking flight from her hands. As the children finished their work, Maya made her way slowly to where her father sat. Her walking was still uneven, her legs still requiring braces, but she moved with growing confidence. Do you think Mom would like it? She asked, leaning against his shoulder as they admired the finished mural. James wrapped his arm around her. She'd love it almost as much as she would love hearing your voice again. Maya picked up a paintbrush, adding one final detail to the mural, a small heart hidden within the branches of a tree. She stood back, her hand still on her father's shoulder, the other holding her paintbrush. Some stories don't have words, she said softly, but they still need to be told. In that moment, as father and daughter stood before a wall of color created by children who had found a safe place to express themselves, the weight of silence lifted from Mia's shoulders, replaced by the lighter, brighter burden of hope.